Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card. Today I've got a pretty easy card. It's made using the Favorite Flower set, the swirly right here and the sentiment, and just 3 distress markers. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the swirly stamp from this set and some Versamark ink. I'm going to stamp it on some Strathmore 90-pound watercolor paper. I'm going to stamp it 6 times because that's how many I'm going to need for this design. And then I'll sprinkle it with some white embossing powder and heat it to set it. Now I'm using 3 distress markers. You can use any 3 markers. I just thought the blue, the purple, and the pink would go well together. So I'm going to do different combinations of these colors 2 at a time. So first I'm going to color the inside, and here I've got Salty Ocean and Seedless Preserves on the outside. Then I'm going to wet a brush with some water. I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to do little circles, and I'm going to work my way around to the outer circle. You can see how those colors are blending. And I'm just going to keep going. I'm never going back to the center. I'm just going to keep rolling it around until I get to the outside. And then I'm going to start on my next one. This one is Picked Raspberry and Seedless Preserves. So I'm going to leave a little bit of white space in the middle in between those 2 colors so they don't blend too much. And I'm going to be careful as I move my brush out to the outside to make sure I don't come back in at all, because I don't want the colors to get too blended. So I'm just going to carry on here doing 2 colors at a time. I'm going to make them all different, except I repeated one. I repeated the Salty Ocean in the middle, Seedless Preserves on the outside, because I like that one a lot. Now when you're picking your 3 colors, I would stick with colors that are close to each other in the rainbow. So pink, blue, and purple are close to each other. If you wanted to try like yellow, green, and blue, or red, orange, and yellow, those will all be good combinations. Now once I'm done with coloring all these swirlies, I'm going to cut them out individually with a scissor. Alright, now I've got a panel of Neenah Solar white cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm going to mark it here so you can see where I'm cutting it. It's at 1 1/8, and then I'll measure 1 1/4, so just slightly larger. And then my next one is going to be 2 7/8. Now if you add all of those together, you'll come out with 5 1/4, which means I've got 1/4 of an inch to spread out across these 2 holes, which will be 1/8 of an inch each. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just going to arrange them how I'm going to put them on the card, and I'm going to put one of those swirlies on the left hand side so I could see how far out it comes, so I could put my sentiment where I need it. And now I'm going to stamp it down there with some VersaFine black onyx ink. I'm going to grab my Stamp-A-Majig just in case I need to stamp it again, because I want to make sure I get good coverage. And it came out great, so I didn't need to do that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is grab this dotted stamp that comes in the set. I'm going to use the same ink, and I'm going to randomly stamp this along the left hand edge where I'm going to be putting my swirlies. And I'm not going to get it perfect the first time. This is sort of a base layer, and then I'll go back and add more of these dots once I figure out where each of the swirlies are going to be placed on this left side. Now I've also cut 2 pieces of 4 1/4 by 3/4 of an inch black cardstock, and this is going to be in between my white panels. Now I want my white panels to be popped up from the base, and I want my black to be adhered directly to the base flat. So I'm going to take my Scotch foam tape, and I'm going to adhere the black piece to the top panel and to the bottom panel, and that's going to make it easiest for me to get everything lined up when I adhere all these pieces to my card base. So you can see how these will fit together, and then the You're My Favorite will be in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and finish putting some foam tape on the top portion. And I have enough room for 2 of these. Now I wish I had put some adhesive, just some ATG, on the black cardstock. I kind of forgot to do that, so I'll go back later and fix that issue. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the bottom. Now here I am putting the ATG tape runner on the black piece, and then there's enough room for me to have one more strip of Scotch foam tape on the bottom panel. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this. Now this is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch folded Neenah card base. And then you can see when I put in the middle, I'll be able to center that. So here's where I fixed that I just put some 2A glue pen right underneath the black, and then I press down to adhere it to the card base. And then finally I'll take that middle strip and again use my Scotch foam tape right in the center there, and then I can center it so that I have equal space of black on the top and the bottom. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is arrange my swirlies, and I spend a lot of time doing this. I don't know why, I just want it to be exactly perfect. But once I get them all figured out, and I didn't do them all like layered on top, so I have some on top of others that you wouldn't think, so it's kind of a random what's on top of what. And then I figured out where I needed some more dots, and I added those, and now I'm going back and taking each of my swirlies and putting some ATG, but I'm not pressing too hard because I knew I was going to add a few more black dots after I adhered them. So I just kind of barely laid them down there so they wouldn't stick. And then I'm going back and adding a couple of those dots again. Now I wanted to add some to the top there, and look at my right hand. When I lift it up, you'll see that I had ink on my finger. And so I realized that, and I'm like, oh man, I do this all the time. So I got out my sanding block, and usually I really put a lot of pressure, or I'm just doing one area way too much, and this time you'll see, I know it's kind of fast, but I'm covering a very, very wide area. So I'm really sanding almost the whole top panel, and by doing this, I was able to really do a good job of getting this ink up. I mean, you can barely see it, so I was really happy about that. Alright, just for a final touch, I wanted to add a heart. And so I colored some cardstock with the picked raspberry, and then I used my confetti heart punch by Stampin' Up! To punch out a bunch of hearts, and I just picked one, and I used a two-way glue pen and just put a little bit of glue there and used my pick-me-up stick to stick it down there. And I felt like this sort of added a little bit of color on the right-hand side to balance out all those swirlies on the left, so it didn't weigh too much on the left-hand side. Now this pick-me-up stick comes with a chisel tip, and so that's what I'm using right here to press it down, make sure it's just right in place. And that finishes the card for today. It's pretty simple, and I love how the watercolor works on the swirly. So anyway, if you haven't entered the watercolor challenge, please do, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.